Right, back live tonight. You're in Focus, and thanks for staying on. City of Johannesburg ActionSA Chief Whip says that there's sufficient evidence proving that Economic Development MMC Nomoya Mnisi instructed officials to facilitate an unauthorized payment to an ANC Youth League. We spoke to Zark Lebatlang yesterday, and he says that there's an invoice to support the claims. Finance MMC Dada Morero here now to respond to some of those issues and whether the MMC did instruct the JPC to actually pay a youth league invoice to the sum of 800,000. To be exact, it's actually 716,435. MMC, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, sir, and good evening to you and your viewers.
Let's start at this point, maybe before we get to the details. The fact that your office is not the one that should be investigating this. According to ActionSA, they've written to the Speaker, at least the Speaker should be the one investigating this. They've written to the Mayor, Executive Mayor, who's the one who appoints the executive, MMCs and so on and so forth, should be the one instituting the investigation and not the Department of Finance. Why
certainly, Finance is not responsible for investigations, but you'd know that we are also responsible for governance, and from that point of view, when we saw the allegations, we thought it was important to say, yes, the investigations should be investigated. And you'd know that I also stand as the leader of the ANC in the ANC caucus in Johannesburg. So it was important for us to also comment that this matter, yes, requires investigation from a governance point of view. We also acknowledge that, in fact, the matter is raised by ActionSA did follow the requirements that have been stipulated by the standing rules of council as to how do you go about raising an allegation. So that matter has no contest on it. And of course, we do have our own view in as far as believing that anyway, the allegations are baseless, and it's on the basis of a rule in council that allows for you to argue whether the allegation is technical or trivial, and in this case we think it is trivial and therefore it's baseless, and it's in accordance to Rule 151, which we think we will follow as the ANC, of course, in working with our councillor to support and give proof that in fact the allegations are baseless.
Yeah. Trivial could mean a number of things, but certainly would not mean that it did not happen. Right? It could be trivial, and you could be arguing that, well, it's a minor issue. Yes, it happened. So, for example, there is an invoice that is dated 12th June 2023, attention to the MMC's name, Nomoya Mnisi.
And yeah, certainly the code is there, yeah, which comes from a hotel, which is, I think, is the Cedarwood Hotel. Yeah. And remember, she has been acting at that time before she was elected into the National Executive Committee of the ANC Youth League. As a leader of the ANC Youth League in Johannesburg, she was responsible for fundraising, as the title was that she's a fundraiser. And in executing her duties, she went out to fundraise on behalf of the Youth League so that she can pay for the conference, which is something that is allowed. And where we are stating we are yet to see any evidence that suggested that she gave an instruction directly to the CFO of the Johannesburg Property Company. So we would want to see that, because we believe there's nothing of that nature, and therefore allow for an investigation to be undertaken on this matter. But we are convinced as the ANC that what is important is following, of course, the rules of council, but we are convinced that the matter is baseless, and it's on the basis of the information that is in front of us as the ANC, and we think that it's baseless. But I think it is also important to note that what we appreciate is that the rules of council have been followed, and all of us must follow the rules of council and allow for council to come back and say, yes, there's no substance into the investigation. As the ANC, we are convinced that it's baseless. She was executing her duties.
There's also the internal memo that has been written to at least members within the administration as far as the accounting officers are concerned, and so on and so forth, which says that I'm not sure what wrong I've done to the MMC except to refuse to deal with an invoice for an amount close to R1 million for a venue addressed to Councillor Nomoya Mnisi. Obviously, I did not pay such an invoice as it did not relate to JPC operations, and this aggravated the MMC to a point where she wants me to be removed.
Well, we would allow for the investigation to even prove whether the CFO did receive an instruction, but where we are, there's no instruction that he would have received from Councillor Mnisi. In fact, Councillor Mnisi, as the fundraiser, spoke to quite a number of people to assist in the fundraising, which I don't think she did instruct anyone to raise funds on behalf of the ANC Youth League. Yes. She also requested me as the chairperson of the ANC in Johannesburg to see if I can find sponsors to help them pay for the conference, which is something that normally happens within organizations, to look for sponsors to fund conference. And you're basically looking at businesses as people who are doing businesses. There's no government that can take government money to pay for a conference of a political party. That can't happen. You can even go to the records of JPC now. There's no, at any point, JPC would have paid for conference fees of any political party that is in council. So we don't know what would have been the issues raised by the CFO that suggest that he was instructed to take money from the coffers of the government. I think the board chair would have then been informed. The CEO would have then been informed that money has been taken from coffers of the company to pay for the ANC, something which has never happened, and it will never happen in the city of Johannesburg.
We'll come to the board interactions in just a moment, but let's stay with the acting, was the acting at the time CFO. And the fact that when he was acting at the time and when he turned whistleblower, he felt that he was being certainly victimized for refusing to pay this particular invoice. And even his labor organization, SAMO, agreeing to an extent that there is outright corruption that was going on there. As far as this particular situation is concerned, and they are lodging their concern with the city manager, the JPC CEO, as well as the board chairperson, and how they are treating Mr. Mzo.
Well, there are two things to the matter that probably might have to isolate the matter of him alleging that he has been mistreated in the company. And I think if you read the letter, it also says the CEO did not protect him. So that's one part that I think the organization, JPC, and the board can deal with. The part that for us we have to deal with is allegations that have been leveled against the Councillor Mnisi, which we think, as I said, they're baseless. And we're saying also we are yet to see any instruction that has been given to the acting CFO that says to him he must take money from the company and pay a quote that comes from the hotel. Right. Now, government has processes for it to pay. You must have first produced that there's a particular need for you to pay this business, which is a report, it's a motivation that gets signed by a number of people before it eventually gets to the CFO. So whoever would have procured the services of the hotel would have to sign off and say, we are having this workshop at this hotel, this is the amount that needs to be paid. It goes through the signature processes until it gets to the CFO. Yeah. So in this case, as we say, we are yet to see that instruction going through.
So if indeed this invoice was taken and given directly to the CFO by the councillor, he would have been correct to refuse to pay it?
Yes, you can't pay it. Yes, it's incorrect. It's wrong. You can't even start thinking of taking government money to pay it in that fashion. That's not how government works. So he knows himself that he would not have done that. So we are yet to see whether...
But he was doing the right thing and is arguing that he was being harassed, and therefore at a political level...
The investigation will come back and determine that. We are convinced that there was no form of harassment, there was no instruction that was given to the CFO.
Yeah.
That thing has not existed anywhere, and there's evidence to that effect to suggest that there was no instruction. As I said, Thabo, as the chairperson, probably on the same day or same week, I received a code of that nature, which is here on my e-phone, and she had asked me, Chair, can you also assist? We've got this conference, and look at the businesses that you know who may want to sponsor and contribute towards the Youth League conference. So in doing her business, her work as the fundraiser, she spoke to quite a number of people to help us fundraise, which normally happens in the political environment, to go out and raise money for such meetings. All what we will appreciate and accept is that the matter has been raised. ActionSA has raised it quite vocally, but what we appreciate is that they followed the process of the rules of council. We are also following the rules of council, and hence we have called, say, yes, let's have an investigation, and the Speaker will authorize and do the necessary thing as council is empowered to the Speaker to do so.
So the big issue that is coming now, at least from what we are seeing here, is that then there was therefore political pressure, at least that was exerted on the board to deal with Mr. Mzobe. Initially, he was supposed to have been completely removed, but there are some within that board who said, well, he can be kept at maybe a minimal level, or be taken back to his financial manager position and be removed from the acting CFO. Look at some of these WhatsApp messages and tell me if you believe that this is a proper, I suppose, engagement. If it is, well, it seems the number is the number of the MMC, and certainly was sent to board members. One of them says, hi, are you going to send your retirement letter, or you want me to retire you? I will give you till Monday to submit the letter. Another one says here, I have the recording. I'm not interested in who said what. I didn't rely on anyone to give me any information. You must go to your friends that you are loyal to. I'm certain they will hire you. For now, I need you to resign. Saying this is the MMC putting pressure on board members to resign because they didn't carry out their instruction.
Well, that's a different conversation from the current allegation. Which conversation as governance will then have to have that conversation with the MMC on how you interact and relate with board members. Remember, she has entities that reports to her, and those entities who have appointed boards that have to exercise their own oversight on companies in the city of Johannesburg, which is our municipal-owned entity. So it's a different conversation, which I think would have a discussion with as governance, as head of governance, in terms of how the MMCs should interact with boards. So that's a different conversation that we must have. Of course, you can't have a situation of the MMC and board members interacting in that fashion. There's clear procedures on how the boards should be functioning. So unfortunately, it could have been an unfortunate situation, which I think at the level of governance we have a responsibility to interact with the MMC and the chair of the board on what is it that we expect them to be doing. So that's something that we have agreed we're going to have a conversation with the MMC and the chairperson of the board.
So you think it just warrants a conversation? Is it too early?
No, it warrants. No, you can't really suspend on the basis of that. Allow a conversation so that you understand. Remember, majority of us just came in now as councillors, as members of the mayoral committee. We went through a particular induction, and possibly there are certain things that we have still have to learn to understand on our responsibilities and how we interact with entities in particular, because they will be a bit different from core departments which do not have boards where you interact directly with the executive director. So we might have to go through some discussions and clear the air with the MMC, but I don't think is something that would warrant a particular suspension on the basis of having interacted with board members, which in fact the board members would have been appointed through a process of interviews until we concluded on those that we think are fit to serve in our boards and conduct oversight on behalf of the city. So we'll have to have that discussion and clear how we interact with board members.
The big gripe here, at least from Mr. Mzobe's point of view, is that the MMC has decided that he's not the right candidate to be the CFO, and therefore she doesn't want him there, and she wants her own people to be put there. That's why she would put such pressure on members of the board and so on and so forth, if they are not going to put the person that she wants in that position.
No, I don't think Mr. Mzobe would be correct in his assertion. You'd remember that as MMCs, we don't get involved in the recruitment processes. We only get involved in the recruitment of core departments. In terms of MOEs, is the function of the boards, and it's the boards that will come to a conclusion. So everyone is allowed to apply once a position has been advertised, and at no stage the MMC will be sitting in those interviews. It's a prerogative of the board to set up a panel, and that panel will do the interviews on behalf of the company and produce the necessary report. So it will be a wrong assumption to already declare that the MMC does not want to be in that position. She has no reason to do that, except to allow for the process to be undertaken. And of course, the chair of the board and the CEO also has a responsibility to brief the MMC in terms of that process as to have they concluded with the advert, at what point, and have they now advertised. And I think the role of the MMC will then end at that point. Yeah. Moving forward is the board and the CEO.
So she can't delay that process, as it is claimed, that she is delaying exactly that process. That
well,
it has been done.
Perhaps there are reasons that the MMC would want to be briefed. It could be that the MMC has not had opportunity to be briefed in detail in terms of the process that I've just outlined. And once she has been briefed, I mean, they've just concluded a few in her environment. I know at the Joburg market, when we just arrived, there was a process to appoint the CFO. She went through that process, and eventually a CFO was appointed. So a few of the boards were already appointing CEOs and CFOs. And of course, there are those that would have been delayed because the MMC still needs to be taken through. Perhaps she has not had sufficient time to sit with the chair of the board and the CEO for her to be briefed on the process, which is an important thing because now you're talking at quite senior positions, so she needs to be taken into confidence, especially if it's a CEO or a CFO. The MMCs must be taken into confidence by the chair of the board. And there are instances where positions would have been delayed, even in core departments, would have delayed the process of advertising or would have delayed the processes of appointment even after the interviews has been concluded. There could be reasons whether you're still negotiating with the incumbent or you're still waiting for assessment reports. So there's a number of things that can lead to it being delayed. It might not necessarily be on the basis that I do not like the candidate. That will be very, very wrong. Or I do not like some of the people that have applied. It will be very, very wrong because it doesn't mean if you have applied for the position, you already have the position. Right. You have applied, you must compete with everyone else until the position is concluded. So it's a wrong assumption from the acting CEO to have taken that view. I think he should allow a process where the MMC is properly briefed and the interviews will take on, and nothing says he can't even go to the interviews and compete with all other applicants. Who knows, he might be the preferred candidate by the process of interviews. If he performs so well, and convinces the panel otherwise that is the right man for the job.
Finance MMC, appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Dada Morero there, City of Johannesburg Finance MMC, explaining to us some of the issues and the processes around these particular allegations.